I mean, that was a good phone call because I found out somebody was transitioned from critical to intermediate. But to hear somebody was in freaking critical care from a baseball, that's terrible. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming back to another edition of Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. I'm here again with Brianna Ludwig, my co-host. Great to be here again with you guys this afternoon. I'm going to be introducing a guest very shortly. People have tuned in before. They understand that we turn the tables where the guests ask us questions about foul ball safety now. So we're looking forward to getting to our guest in a couple of minutes. I'd like to get to some news. I brought it up earlier on another podcast, but since it's still pretty fresh and we're not exactly sure what kind of response we're going to get, we wrote a letter to the New York Mets. In New York, a few days back, a ball actually went through the net, creating a hole. And somebody who was sitting in that section actually did take a picture. I happened to have been watching the game on TV, and the announcers made reference to it. The highlights or the cameras on the TV did not show, they moved right on. But the announcers did say something like, oh boy, a ball just went through the nets. But they didn't put any emphasis into it. And I thought it was worthy of a further investigation. So we found the picture. I wrote a letter to the Mets, and they did get back to me, and they said the appropriate department will get in touch with us. So we'll see. But either way, it raises the question, if the material is strong enough, that, with the netting that is up, we are concerned about people sitting above nets because sometimes it gives the illusion, even with nets, that people are going to be protected by straight line drives or arcing fast line drives. Not always the case. We know of people that have been blinded in major league ballparks not too long ago. So it gives a sense of a couple of years ago in Pittsburgh, actually, somebody was blinded by a foul ball. Maybe people in ballparks are still walking around not thinking about those possibilities. But that's more or less what foul ball safety now is. It's a platform to enlighten, inform, and give people a sense of, you don't know everything. You may only know very little, and maybe the establishment should have been telling us a whole lot more, before 2025 and certainly today. So there's still a lot of questions to be raised that people aren't even raising. So that's what we're going to potentially do, bring people in the light about what we know about foul ball safety now. So I think it's time we could bring on our guest for today. Really interesting person. So excited to meet her again. Cameron Robles. She has a master's in statistics, and she's going to bring on some questions to us. How you doing there, Cameron?
I'm doing pretty good. Hi, Jordan.
Hi, terrific. Yeah, happy to get right into it with you, and excited to hear some of your questions.
I've been involved with the Dodgers before, so I would like to know if there are certain stadiums and places that are interested in what you do, or if there's any, just you go and pursue people, and like you were talking about the one that just happened, you say, "What was that? And what are you going to do about it?" I would like to know how that works.
Well, yes. For people who are tuning in for the first time, foul ball safety now, I think definitely demonstrates 6 years of me showing up and trying to create a conversation based on all the information that we've obtained. For the most part, what I'm thinking about are the 30 major league ballparks and the 169 other professional ballparks. So that makes a total of 199. Now we're learning about situations like in the Queens College matter, which is college. A Queens College student whistleblower contacted me some months ago concerned that their balls are hitting over the side and that elementary school students are exposed to their fly balls, and they're wondering amongst themselves who will be the one to do the unfortunate. And if people Google Earth, Queens College, you'll see the elementary school. The questions are really for us to put on the table so we believe a larger dialogue will come of it. I think people will understand from what we've learned in 6 years that, my instincts were correct to gather all this material. Working with a journalist for 6 years, Brendan. We've interviewed 70 people. Just interviewed a bat boy who worked for the Dodgers a couple of days ago, yesterday, as a matter of fact. So people are coming to this conversation, willing to give us their names and tell us their experiences, whether they're victims. We've interviewed more than 30 baseball players with their perspective, mostly former players, some current, minor leaguers, and people looking to get major leaguer jobs, broadcasters, some lawyers, cameramen. But feel free to follow up.
Okay. Well, I guess I just wondered what led you to get involved with this. Just you'd been to too many games and seen too many people hurt without any follow up, or I think it's a great thing because I've seen plenty of it happen. I guess people have, but I guess I just wanted to know what your connection is to the sport that led you to get involved.
Just being a kid in Brooklyn, growing up rooting for the Mets, playing Little League baseball and playing, backyard baseball or in the park baseball with friends and going to a lot of games. And then one day seeing on the news in 2019 a little girl getting smashed in Houston. And I thought pretty disgusting. And fast forward to 2025, there's still ballparks in America between 30 and 40 that mirror the same image, or at least the ball coming in that direction at that speed. And I think it's so inappropriate that business as usual is happening in at least 30 to 40 places, where you can see on the video, the ESPN production from 2019, that no human being should be exposed to those line drives. Baseball players on their nights off would not want to sit there. And why are we allowing human beings, 6.5 years later, to still be sitting in those sections in 30 to 40 ballparks?
I mean, how deep do you go with this? I mean,
Mhm.
do you follow these people? Do they ever sue the ballparks? Do they ever get any retribution? Do they just say, "Oh, great, I missed and it knocked me out and it caused me to have cancer," and go on with life? Or, have you stayed with them long enough, you probably have, to see where it goes, if any
Yeah.
place?
Yeah. So what we've learned along the way, before 2019, back in the early 1900s, so more than 100 years ago, something became the baseball rule. So professional baseball knew that doing business as usual from 1913 till now, that if anyone did get hit by a ball or a bat, that they probably wouldn't have a good chance at collecting anything from the teams, let alone even finding a lawyer, because most lawyers aren't even taking on the cases. We know from law school students who've been working with me that, for example, they may see only 10 cases filed. That's a lot of cases either way if 10 people got hurt. But they may see 10 cases filed in one state over 100 years, and people may say that's not a lot, but maybe there were 190 other incidences in that particular state that never made it out of the lawyer's office because the lawyer is not going to take the case. It's not a slam dunk for them. They're not going to do 20 or 30 hours worth of work to go into a courtroom and not even get in the door because of the baseball rule. And they're not going to even get through round one. So we believe that really there's been enough documentation, fortunately, before I came along, that said it was a problem. 2012 to 2019, there was an NBC study that implied maybe 5,000 people reported to first aid. If you extrapolated all the numbers from the teams, maybe 5,000 people reported to first aid, mainly because of baseball injuries. But that's worthy of a further explanation, a further discussion for another conversation. But please go to Foul Ball Safety Now, Google NBC study between 2012 and 2019, how many people may have been injured or reported to first aid. Also, Brendan, the journalist I've been with for 6 years, we've documented somewhere in the mid 40s of how many children have been seriously injured by foul ball since 2008. And I know of 2 children that were critically injured in the summer of 2023 in the minor leagues. Critically injured. I actually had to make a call doing a little investigation, and it's pretty nerve-wracking calling a hospital, finding out from an overnight nurse, well, they were in critical care, but they were upgraded to intermediate care. I mean, that was a good phone call because I found out somebody was transitioned from critical to intermediate. But to hear somebody was in freaking critical care from a baseball, that's terrible.
I'm just thinking back to when, years ago, when I knew a
Yeah.
child who was hit by a baseball, with his own league, let alone, a professional league, and it caused him to have cancer. He had a lump on his eye, and I was there one day when he was, having the aftermath of good old chemo. And it
Uh,
was kind of frightening to think that just from that kind of playing in the yard with 10-year-olds would do something like that to you, and at the stadium is so much more detrimental that I can't imagine, what could
yeah.
happen, but as far as the cases, I mean, that does sound like a very small amount of cases to me, considering how wild the balls can get sometimes, but I hear you saying that you don't get involved at all with any comp cases, and it's hard enough to get a regular lawyer involved, but you don't help people to get compensation for, what's happened to them. Is that correct? I guess it is.
What I'm doing, I'm just a voice and I'm putting some time and money into getting the voice heard about education. There's 80 million baseball fans out there. I don't think, more than I don't think 79 million of them have ever been affected or will ever be affected by the foul ball experience. So they may be unaffected, never ever came across their mind that there's any problem about going to a game, never felt like their kids were in danger. I do believe there's a lot of fans like myself that are very informed about the matter and maybe take some precautions. But even if the number wasn't 78 million, even if it was 40 million and the other half were informed, shouldn't the other half be informed about what's really happening at the game? And it's not a cotton candy experience and it's not just free and clear. We're going to forget about the world for the next 3 hours and have a great old time. It's not a wholesome family experience. It's just not. Because once those people get wind of what they never learned up until that point, they're gonna realize that, wow, it could have been us the day before, the day after. And all the families that I've come across, Brendan and I have interviewed more than 70 people, more than 20 victims, around 20 victims and family members, people who've lost eyes. Erwin Goebel, whose wife unfortunately was killed at the Dodger game. These folks will never feel, the same way about baseball again, or why should they? And baseball can't really say anything to them. There's really no genuine apology because if they extend an apology, it means it's genuine and it won't happen to anyone else. So they can't do that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I guess I just I just think of I I'm not a baseball fan, and I've
Okay.
seen a lot of this happen and heard about a lot of it happen, and it's a great thing that you're doing it, but I just wonder how many stadiums are really involved in the severity of it, or you say they can apologize because that means it was wrong and won't happen again. Well, that seems kind of silly because, no, they can't guarantee it's not gonna happen again,
Right.
but
Exactly.
but they need to be aware and to make the people aware of it's not just reaching up and, you might lose your arm or an eye or an ear doing it, and it just and I'm glad that you've been doing it for 6 years and you've had some success, but it just seems like that I would hope, and maybe you can tell me, that, more stadiums would be involved with the severity of the situation, and they would be helping you. I don't know if that's a silly thing.
Yeah. I have a feeling that baseball is a very organized institution worth billions of dollars. They have lawyers that work within the game, so they're very sharp and they're smart. And they know they have this thing called the baseball rule that in most states, they don't have the incentive to fix the ballparks where it is a guaranteed good, safe time. But the fact is that baseballs are not only flying inside ballparks at crazy speeds into people, but they're also flying outside of ballparks. The 169 ballparks that I mentioned, just in the last few months, getting contacted by a law firm in California. They were preparing for trial. There's 5 or 10 or 15 balls that may fly outside a ballpark within a 3-hour period, flying over sides, similar to the Queens College that I mentioned to you, that these young athletes are concerned about balls flying over the sides and hitting kids. Well, the management of these teams clearly understand that balls will be flying outside into the parking lot or hitting a window or maybe hitting someone's head like it did 2 years ago in the summer of 2023, and we just learned about it, that case being settled, but nobody knows about it. Soon you'll be able to go to my website. I'm gonna have a section about Modesto, California. I'm gonna put a couple of letters, 3 letters we wrote to the Modesto newspaper in the last month, give or take, and we're trying to get everyone in Modesto to at least know this was business as usual for the last 2 years. You didn't know about this incident. Well, how do you feel now? Or you didn't know that your netting wasn't extended. There's 2 issues about Modesto, one about extended netting inside the ballpark. They chose not to do extension of netting. I have a feeling they didn't extend their netting because they were moving to a new city next year in San Bernardino. That's one issue, and then another issue, which clearly could have been any of the 169 other ballparks where balls are flying over sides, Queens College too, where a woman got hit in the head, and she supposedly has traumatic brain injury or has a brain injury, can't work anymore. So, you'll see the section on Modesto. It's just a matter of why not us bring this conversation to the people that have been going to games, who looked at baseball one way, may decide to look at it differently from their own past experiences, because they'll feel like, well, we may have dodged a bullet. We realize all those good times were good days and great days, but wow, we didn't even know that we were potentially subjected to those balls. And I think once they do, they'll be fair and honest that, hey, we should have been informed about this. And if people go to Foul Ball Safety Now, and I know you're into statistics, look at Exhibit A1, which is a mathematical report. It's the 538 report from 2019. That's a publication. Brendan and I took a look at it earlier this year, and I think people will say we added to it, and it's a lot more clearer about just demonstrating how many balls are going into seats at speeds. And once people put 2 and 2 together, they're going to see something that they may have not seen before, and it'll get them thinking a certain way. And that's what we want. We want people to consider what they didn't know. Now they know more. How do you feel now? And what do you think about business is being done as usual? And obviously, the goal is to prevent black and blues moving forward. That's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to educate. So my 6 years, 6.5 years is all about, but we're there, we're getting there, and we're going to stay with it.
Going to the statistics part of it, do you have full statistics? I mean, or can you get full statistics on how many injured people and how much property? And I mean, they put warnings on cigarettes, right? It doesn't
Right.
stop people. They still sell cigarettes. So, and there's warnings on a lot of things that, you get the side effects for all kinds.
Sure.
So it's neat. Your information needs to be out there. And I know that you said you have a lot of information, but I don't know if they don't want it or, if they're scared of it, sounds like. But they need to be open with these people, and the more closed they are, the more it's gonna catch up to them when they finally figure it
That's
out.
right. That's what we hope. You see,
Oh,
we don't mind transparency. We don't mind them saying, "Hey, this is the reality," but why are they bringing their kids? Maybe like running with bulls in Spain, you have to be 18 and older. 3 of us may not be running anytime soon with the bulls, but at least in that community, you're not allowed to bring the little kids. Why isn't baseball just telling us to not bring our kids? Because this is the reality. You can expect these amount of missiles coming at you or these amount of balls coming at you at these speeds, and there's no place for children. If you as an adult want to take those risks, that's one thing, but baseball doesn't market their sport that way. And again, look at Exhibit A1 from 2019, the 538 report that Brendan and I just revisited from just earlier this year in 2025. Once people understand, certainly 30 to 40 cities are still acting irresponsibly by allowing lack of netting in certain sections where when you see it's horrifying that a human being is still sitting in sections exposed to these balls. It's unacceptable of any age. So it's just a lot to be learned. I think people are going to get a sense at the end of the day that nothing was communicated to the fans. If it had ever been, nothing appropriate was communicated to fans. If it was, agencies would have gotten the memo and would have stepped in and said things on behalf of kids, on behalf of any human being. There would have been some regulations or some guidelines suggested and conversations created. That's what we're doing here. We are having a three-way conversation. Potentially 12 people will hear, and then 36. And who knows, maybe we'll pass on the torch to the agency or the individual that's ready to really make some advocacy. I think I am, but somebody could double down or spend 10 times as more money than I'm spending on this because they think it's worthy of recognizing how the baseball was operating in the past and in the present, and hopefully it'll be done the right way sometime in the future. But we're still in the dark ages, 2025. I always say lately that I hope we can say in 10 years from now, you remember those dark ages back in 2025 when nobody knew a lot. That's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to inform.
That's great. I mean, I think what you're doing is great because people don't realize what the danger is, and I applaud you. I'm proud of
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you.
Well, Cameron, I want to start off by saying I love the reference you made to cigarettes because there's hardly a person who chooses to smoke a cigarette nowadays and doesn't fully know the risks of what could happen to them if they chose to smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
And so I think more than anything, even if the MLB doesn't fix the issue, if this could at least become common knowledge the same way that everybody knows the risk of a cigarette, people could know the risk and the injuries of going to games, that would be a huge win for foul ball safety now. But there aren't a lot of data and statistics that are readily available to the public because a lot of these teams won't participate in any research. And so even the studies that have been published by 538, there was a study by NBC, the scientists are having to fill in the gaps because only a handful of teams are choosing to participate. So Cameron, what I wanted to ask you as somebody who holds a master's in statistics, how much damage do you think that's done to the public not having this data be available to them?
Oh my gosh, you can't put a number on that. That's just I mean, statistics sometimes at best is regurgitating what the people want you to say, but it doesn't stop people and you can't be as thorough as you want to. It's just if Jordan's just one man, I mean, and Brendan, that's really hard. And if there could be some kind of thing like the Surgeon General's warning or something that was an announcement at the stadiums and stuff. I'm sure you've thought of this, and they probably said, "Are you kidding me?" Just to make sure that people understand what the deal is and what could happen. It would just open a lot of eyes and a lot of people who just think baseball's about hot dogs and beer. It's not, and it's just very, very disconcerting to think about all that. But I don't have
I,
an
I
answer how deep it
yes,
goes.
I'll just jump in on that just for a second. Warnings are given at the game, and sometimes they're in your face. There could be a warning that there's a seat right in front of you, and it says, "Be careful of a foul ball." But how are we getting out of the way of that? And that's what I'm upset about. We're not superheroes. We're not equipped to block the ball. And, by them telling you, be careful of a foul ball, what is that going to do for your 4-year-old? Really? 3 hours of sitting there, even as the most attentive fan, there was a baseball player, Hunter Wendelstadt, who was at the first base, which is 90 feet away, and he was 10 feet behind the first base umpire. The ball hit him right in the middle of the head. He hasn't worked in 3 or 4 months, and we don't know what the whole long-term extent of his injury is. And think about just to the side 100 feet, those sections are exposed in 30 to 40 cities, clearly, right now, and why business as usual has been conducted. This video was shown to the world in 2019, 6.5 years ago. And still, it's incredible. Major League Baseball took 3.5 years before they said something about it, about teams extending their netting. And at the time, there were about 70 teams that had no netting past the end of the dugout. It was 3.5 years after the world saw this horrifying video that Major League Baseball said something. Brianna said something before. The teams actually didn't give the data. It was a few teams that gave the data, but it was actually the independent contractors that shared the data with the NBC study. Teams aren't giving up anything anytime soon. Fortunately, NBC got 4 of the 30 teams, 4 of the independent contractors, the first aid contractors who work for the teams, to give up their data. So that's what came up with the numbers, which if you extrapolated the other 26 out of the 30 teams, 26 teams, maybe the number was around 5,000 that reported to the first aid. Not all with eye injuries or head injuries, but clearly a lot of injuries, and a lot of them were due to foul balls. So this is a really productive conversation. Go
I
ahead,
just find it
Cameron.
ridiculous that they're putting signs on the back of seats. That's just
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not a just and that's not an information. I was talking about, on the jumbotrons or something like that, or on the tickets or something. I mean, that's just silly. That's just an
Well,
attorney saying, "Put signs on the back of seats," and that's stupid. But
right, they may put it up on the Jumbotron as well, but you were already there. It's like being on a road where there's landmines. It's like being on a construction site. Where do you ever see kids, let alone without helmets, on a construction site? You're already there. Where are you gonna go? And even when the ball nearly misses people, the community stays. They don't know what the effect of a direct hit is. There are warnings within the 3 hours because balls nearly miss people on a regular basis, and nobody evacuates. But you know who's not there? The players' families. They're not there
yeah,
because they're
yeah.
told in advance not to sit there. And players have told us repeatedly they don't allow their own families to sit there. They knew in early on in professional baseball that their families members would sit in certain places. The coach who passed away, Mike Kuba, he was hit by a ball in 2008. He used to tell his girlfriend at the time, when he was a player, "You sit behind the nets." How ironic he was the one who got hit and he died. It turned out a helmet might not have saved him. So there was some proactivity. The coaches in professional baseball started wearing helmets. But Brendan and I think we found out that he wasn't killed by getting hit in the head. It was in the neck. So I don't even know if a helmet would have saved him, but at least the gesture's in place now that the helmets are worn by the coaches on the sidelines. Hunter Wendelstedt, the umpire, maybe it's time for the umpires to put on helmets as well because they're unprotected. Also, the pitchers who pitch the ball, most of them do not wear helmets, and pitchers have been seriously injured. So I'm concerned about the players. A player was hit on the dugout, and he had surgery a few months ago because they're in the dugouts. So whether they're players, whether they're umpires, definitely fans, it's an experience that nobody wants to, feel, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to breathe life into this conversation about balls that are flying in ballparks, outside of ballparks. That's, I guess, how I'm gonna wind up for today. Cameron, was there anything else?
No, I'm just appalled at what's going on, and I again applaud what you're doing, and I just think keep going because it
Well, thank
needs
you.
to be.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it, Cameron.
Oh, thank you.
We have Cameron Robles, and she's got a master's in statistics. And today we have, of course, Brianna helping out and hosting with me. So thank you guys. And until next time.